out of executive session, let the record show that no votes were taken.
Motion by Mr. Zelinski, is there a
Sealed
second?
the minutes.
Seconded by Councilor Allen, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote.
Ms. Ellis? Yes. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Flaherty?
Yes, motion 4-0. So we will go back now to old business, which is item 5D, discussion by council vote or other action on charter review process and timeline. So you all remember that we appointed ourselves as the Charter Review Commission. One of the reasons we did that is because there have been several charter review commissions over the last few years. We've got full reports, at least from 2006 and 2010, filled with wonderful recommendations to consider for charter changes. And that we didn't feel that it's necessary to convene a new entity, a new body to charge them with that. We thought we could go back and look at the code that proposed and come to some conclusions as to which things we would like to put before voters in this time next year. And so, but we haven't really figured out how we're going to do that. And I have put together just a thought process on how we might do that and the timeline. I just wanted to just go over it, get people's input, suggestions. The bottom line is that we have to, you've got to be able to submit legislation to the General Assembly sometime around February, March, in order to have charter changes on the ballot for November of 2014. So that's sort of how I backed into this. But just to go back in time, on September 3rd, we appointed ourselves as the Charter Review Commission. I'm suggesting that on December 2nd, that each of us, each of the town council members, bring forward our top 5 topics for proposed changes to the charter. And I don't expect that we're gonna wordsmith these things at this point. I'm thinking more along the lines of, I want to propose that we redo the budget review timeline. We've been discussing that. That's a topic. We've also discussed in the past this debt limitation without referendum. Currently, where there's a $200,000 cap in the charter. We probably shouldn't have dollar amounts in the charter because the charter is a long-range document. We've talked about the term of the town solicitor. This year that became apparent because we flew without a legal net for a few weeks because the term ends with the council. It didn't give us a chance to interview candidates without service. So that may be a topic. So what I was hoping is that we could come to the meeting on December 2nd with our preferred topics, put them on the table, let's see where the overlap is, let's try to identify our collective priorities, and then we can divvy up and maybe say, we'll each take one, we'll each take 2, or whichever ones people would like to come back with more specific language changes. I'm suggesting that at that point, the town clerk can provide each of us. Let's suppose we talked about the term of the town solicitor as an example. It's one paragraph in the charter. So that paragraph could be copied in a Word document, provided to a councilor who wants to propose an amendment to that. The councilor can draft it up in redline version for whatever changes that person would like to propose, bring it to the meeting on December 16th. Let's see, did I have that right? Vote on which topic here is it? Oh no, I'm sorry. So the second, we would bring those ideas forward, the topics. Then on the 16th, we could discuss those topics and decide which ones we want to go forward with. The last time charter changes were voted on was in 2010. That ballot included, I think it was 8 charter changes, and the ballot looked like it was pretty full. So there is a limit to how much we can fit on the ballot. We don't want to have a multi-page ballot and then people not vote on it. So my thought is that we should have somewhere between, no more than 8 to 10. And then on the meeting on January 6th, we could come to that meeting with those proposed changes. So if Councilor Zelinski had the proposed charter changes for the term of the town solicitor, he'd have one paragraph that would be in redline version that we could consider, discuss, enact upon. Have a first reading, public hearing, come back on January 20th, second reading on proposed changes, public hearing is continued, then come back on February 3rd, close the public hearing, and have a final vote on those changes to put forward in legislation to the General Assembly. So that's what I was thinking. This is by no means, I haven't thought this through that much, so if anybody would like to offer an amendment or a suggestion, or how we get to the finish line, I'm all ears.
President? I think this is a nice draft outline. Previous charter commissions, they've done a lot of the work. Also, you included there any new suggestions, which there may be. You just handed this out, and I've been scanning it quickly. Maybe I should just read it thoroughly, but should we have a workshop somewhere open to the public? Is that in there?
Yeah, that would be, I think, on January 6th.
Reading of proposed changes, public hearing, but how about a workshop where people can actually sit down? We come here, we sit down,
Sure.
everybody kind of brainstorms. Would that be something we could consider? And it is coming during the holiday seasons too, but I think it's something we could accomplish. Something to think about, a workshop. I don't know where we'd fit it in, but.
Well, I mean, I think we could also, we could do the workshop on, say, January 6th, and then just push everything else forward by 2 weeks. That would bring us to February 18th,
Okay.
which I think would be fine.
Does that, what I'm suggesting, does that make sense to have a workshop with the public?
Yeah, I think that makes good sense.
Okay.
Are there any other suggestions? Anything from the administration, from legal counsel?
So, if I may, so you're saying that January 6th, which would be a regularly scheduled meeting,
Correct.
council meeting would be
We'd
included in that meeting?
we do a workshop
Okay,
where we
so
can,
it wouldn't be an extra meeting. I think that's better because the
Yeah.
holiday time, you're not gonna get a
Yeah.
letter.
That's my concern.
Yeah.
But we should open this up, not just public, but I mean, actually, folks that want to sit down with us and work through it.
yeah, I agree. I think that's.
We could put something in the newspaper that if residents, and on the web, if residents are interested in contacting any one of the counselors to bring their views to, I mean, they can do it that way, that's another option if people don't have a chance to come to a meeting.
Now, the example that I cited about the term of the town solicitor, that is a very short paragraph. That wouldn't take a whole lot to amend that. The topic of the budget timeframe, of when budgets are submitted and so forth, we heard from a school committee member this evening, suggesting that's gonna be more involved. So I'm looking forward in the sense, because we did appoint ourselves as the Charter Review Commission, are we all comfortable with taking those, it may be that each of us takes one topic, or maybe the budget timeline, because that's a bigger one person takes that, and maybe another person takes the town solicitor term, and maybe another smaller one. But are we comfortable with doing that, and taking a Word document, just editing it up a little bit, and we're okay with that? Okay.
So,
Okay.
John, you had the calendar of, you tried to forecast out what we were going to be doing. So we're gonna go to December 16th. January's wide open, okay.
January 6th.
Because I'm not averse, I don't know about everybody else, but sometimes it's better, if we're going to have a workshop, sometimes it's better to come in and do it as a dedicated workshop and not combine it with, we don't know what January holds in store for us for our council meetings.
Right, and that's why we've got this calendar, so that we can begin to plug things on here. Right now, January and February, I had a tentative placeholder for charter review recommendations on February 18th, but right now, there's no agenda items tentatively planned for January 6th, 20th, or February 3rd.
If it's going to be a workshop and we can dedicate it just to that, to me, it would make more
Yeah.
sense, because I think a lot of folks are going to be interested in this.
We oftentimes have things that creep onto the calendar as we get like 2 weeks out, but perhaps I can ask the clerk if she could take a look at the calendar and begin to plug things on there that we know are going to happen, just so we can begin to take other things that may not be time sensitive and move them. Okay. Okay, so we don't really need to take a vote on this, I just wanted to get any feedback, and I appreciate your suggestion for the workshop, that makes good sense. Okay. The final item under old business is E, discussion by council vote or other action on in-service training for capital budgets. This is something we've talked about in the past. We did it during the budget cycle. I've also had a conversation with Mr. Erickson about it, because currently the capital planning process goes to the planning board. It's not a perfect system. There's certainly ways we can improve it. And I wanted to get the council's input. I don't have any specific suggestion. It had been talked about having an in-service training on capital budget preparation intended for department heads, so that we can begin to get at some of the issues, one of which we talked about earlier tonight, to get out ahead of that curve, so that we're anticipating expenses that will be cropping up throughout the year. And I don't know if Mr. Erickson has any particular thoughts he'd like to share, or if Madam Administrator does. This is also something, before you speak, it's something that the Budget Committee has brought forward as well, in my conversations with the chair at least.
I mean, there are a number of different aspects of capital budgeting. If you invest in something, is there an alternative that has a better cost-benefit ratio? What if you didn't have this? How would you do it? Would you hire somebody else? Would you rent? Would you privatize? Are you doing everything you can to prolong life with timely maintenance? Those of us who take care of our own vehicles know exactly what that means, but it's generally a concept that's not well understood. What do you do in analyzing something that you've got to see how much useful life it has left? Then, if you're going to acquire it, what is the most cost-effective way to do that? Lease purchase, outright purchase, buy used, refurbish, whatever. So some towns just ask for the cost benefit, and that alone would be a big step forward. Other towns go the whole 9 yards and really understand how things work.
Do you, Mr. Erickson, or Madam Administrator, are you aware of, are there any capital training programs that may be offered to the League of Cities and Towns?
I have a call into them. I thought I might hear from them by this evening, but
Okay.
yeah, I'm quite sure there's someone within the, and I have a meeting tomorrow morning with everyone too, the executive committee, so I'll ask again, just to, I'm sure someone can come and do that for us.
Because that process is going to begin in January,
Yeah.
capital planning?
Usually does, with submissions by December, correct?
Well,
Bob?
within departments,
Right.
it should be, happening now.
I'm already,
Right.
I've already scheduled meetings for next week.
Good.
I believe that the superintendent of schools has indicated to me that although they've submitted in the past, I think in the past 3 years, that they haven't really had much of any dialogue with the planning board on those. In fact, when we did our capital budgets as a council, I don't even think we discussed school capital. So,
There's a couple of issues there. Our recent chairs have been very much against the planning board doing capital budgeting, other than reviewing and sending it to the, this is not a requirement in state law that planning boards do this. You can do it if the town says you should do it in the charter, and our charter says that. In Lincoln, we do both capital budgeting and operational budgeting within the budget committee, and we have a separate subcommittee that does all the capital. And I was the delegate to the capital budget committee that built the senior center and things like that. We should really have more people on the budget committee, so you can have subcommittees, because you don't necessarily have expertise. I mean, John Zambrano was an excellent appointment, because he knows a lot of things that most people don't know about prolonging life and things like that. But you don't necessarily get that with planning board members, because their expertise is really in, or interested more in design and landscape issues and things like that.
It was actually John Zambrano from the Budget Committee that made he made me more aware of the opportunity to really do capital budgeting. As we talk about making investments in these facilities, one of the things that I think is going to instill more confidence in voters to support that is if they believe that we've actually got a capital planning process in place, not only to anticipate when we're going to have major expenses occur, but also just to, because that also includes, and I didn't really realize this, but that also includes the maintenance that you do to prolong the life. And he has that experience from his work in the Attleboro Housing Authority. And I think that the chair of the Budget Committee has also suggested that perhaps the Budget Committee have more of a role in capital budget planning. So that, I think, would be a charter issue for us, because I think that our charter delegates that to the planning board.
Yes.
And so I just wanted, I don't know if people have thoughts on that, if that's something for consideration when we talk about the charter.
I mean, think about Dowling Village. When we were doing Dowling Village, small town should never have been able to handle that, and we did, because they were meeting sometimes 4 times a month, and an enormous amount of reading. There's no way you could do capital budgeting at the same time.
If your agenda is such
Right.
at the end of the
Right.
year, yeah. Mr. President, I don't know if you recall, but we used to, as planning board members, we would do capital. And it was the planners would remind the departments to submit a 5-year forecast. I don't know how much cost-benefit analysis went into that 5-year forecast, but we had a starting point. And a perfect example tonight, we had a heating system go in the highway department that no one could predict, because it was, up until that point, it was being repaired and maintained, so. I don't know, that was part of the planning board. Sometimes we would meet extra to do that, to do the capital budget.
I think that the way that the Budget Committee chair explained it to me is that it could work really well for the Budget Committee, because that would normally be, let's see, he was suggesting that in the off-season, they could really be laying the groundwork in a lot of the because their work is condensed in one part of the year.
It makes sense.
Right. And you understand that operations, and what's capital and what's operations, can change according to Department of Education rules, according to the guidelines here. And in Lincoln, we have, the in-depth, when is this capital and when is this operations? So it's like splitting it into two doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Would anybody have any objection to exploring further the concept of delegating the capital planning function to either a combination of planning board and budget committee, or to the budget committee, if they seem willing to take that on?
I think Mr. Erickson said it previously, some of the planning board members, so they're capable of doing cost-benefit analysis. We have budget committee members that are truly in tune to this, so if it's not in direct disagreement with our charter, I don't see a problem with giving it to the budget committee, if they're willing to take on now, because they're almost a full year. Think about it. They're almost 9 months worth of work at this, if we ask them to start doing this now.
But the planning board goes a full 12 months too. So,
Right,
yeah.
but the budget committee is kind of an ad hoc thing that would come together to meet to do our budgets.
Right.
This is something we would have to discuss. I'm in favor of it.
Okay.
I think it'll work.
Maybe I'll have a conversation with the chair, and he can bring it up at a budget committee meeting, and just take the temperature of members to see if they'd be willing to. Because I get the impression that they were actually interested in doing that, because they saw an opportunity to improve.
Well, and I think also you have Mr. Zambrano on that board, which, he just sparks all sorts of great ideas because of his knowledge base,
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
And if planning board members want to sit, by all means, they could certainly come in.
Okay. So I'll have those conversations, and I'll report back to the council.
One last point, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
When you have 5-year plans, the school committee has done a great job with 5-year plans, but the alternatives, the cost benefit, everything else is missing. There's a huge amount of work to do, but we just don't know what the alternatives would be. So it's a great notebook, and I wish everybody had a notebook like that, but it's still not a basis for making good judgments.
Not that comprehensive.
Right.
Hmm.
And honestly, we didn't have any capital budgeting since 2008. I mean, we didn't buy anything except it was an emergency, and except for police cars. So the departments would call up vendors, and vendors wouldn't give them a written, lengthy estimate, because they knew they weren't gonna get any business from the town. So, and we had to give up our impact fee, because we didn't have a capital budget.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Evans. And please don't go away, because we're gonna come back to the, item number 7 now, which is proposed zoning ordinance amendment regarding section 17, site plan review. This is listed as both a public hearing and discussion by council vote or other action on second reading. You've made some changes that I think are changes in the right direction. The language is more should instead of shall, and provide some guidance. Would you like to elaborate on that?
If you go to section 17.8.1, that was the outstanding area that we were discussing. And if you go to the top of page, I think it's 17.7 for you,
This is the newer version?
the one you got in your packet, yes.
We got both of them.
We have two, so we're looking at November
Newer
18th,
version.
right?
I think it's November 14th.
Mine says 18th.
The following specific areas said shall, and I changed it to should be preserved as undeveloped open space or lot areas. I just put undeveloped areas. The intent of that, I think, was to provide design guidance saying that these should be our priorities for open space acquisitions, which is, habitats for rare, threatened, or endangered flora and fauna. That's exactly what we're doing with the Moose Pond acquisition. It didn't mean that in some project that came in, that automatically got deemed to be open space. I mean, you can't do that.
Right.
I'm sympathetic to that. And if we look at high-value recreational waters, well, you don't build houses on stilts. The worst you're gonna do is put a dock in there, so that's a reasonable request. Habitats, historically significant structures and sites, yeah, we wanna preserve all we can. So if there's a way to keep that, it should be done. Prime agricultural soils, not all farmland is good farmland, but the prime agricultural soils are delineated both USDA and state. And that leaves us with steep slopes above 15% as measured over a 10-foot interval. And I want to address specifically the misinformation that was provided on slopes. Lucian Benoit said 90% of the land is 15% slope or more. Not even close. We know that from the soils maps that about 38% of the town's land area is 8% or more, and probably about 25% for 15% or more. And a 7% slope is pretty steep. Going off College Hill down Angel Road, that's a 7% slope. That's where they had the luge races and the X Games, if you remember, a long time ago. And if you look at a ski slope, typically the green circle runs are between 6 and 25%. So you can ski on a 6% slope. 15% is kind of median for the relatively easy slope. And it's not until you get into the diamond slopes that you get into the 25 to 40% range. So, I just wanted to point out that this is not a draconian measure. And the comment that nothing could have been built on industrial highway doesn't make sense, because between 2006 and 2012, we assumed that that was in fact the ordinance. And we treated everybody, made them comply with that ordinance. And we had development on the Branch development. That was never an issue. And this was approved in 2006. Lucian Benoit was then chair. I could find no comments that he made in public hearing in 2006 when you almost passed it. You got the subsidiary motions. So, I think this is kind of like controversy for no real reason, and I don't see it as onerous. I think it speaks to the comprehensive plan. We have something very similar with the same pictures in the land development subdivision regulations, and so does Berlin. The difference there, if we mix up a shall and a should, the board can easily waive it, because these are primarily for non-residential applications, and that's a major subdivision anyway. A waiver doesn't kick it up any higher, so it's not a big deal to give a waiver for appropriate reasons. But that's the summary of it. That was the only area that was really in contention, and the only other area was on page 17-19 on the new one, where I changed all the shalls related to parking lots to should. And between those two, I think it covered all the areas of concern. Where you see figure 18, and below that, the buffer strip shall be planted with grass, should be planted with grass. Parking areas shall be located in the rear or sides of buildings, should. Parking areas shall be softened with vegetative themes, should. So those are the two areas that were still.
And then there's that earlier reference to the entire ordinance saying that it should be promoted to the extent practical. That applied to the entire ordinance.
Right.
So we're here with this is a public hearing. I don't see anybody here who is here to speak on it, although I should perhaps the camera. And it's also listed as a second reading. There are a number of adjustments that you made to it based on the discussion at the last meeting, which was also a second reading, correct?
Yes, but in the sense of clean copy being all black, I can't do that because you hadn't specifically voted on any of the sub-areas.
Okay.
So this sort of ties it all together.
Okay.
I mean, I got the sense of where you wanted to go.
Right.
What we do? We
Well-
accept this as a second reading? Mr. Yazbek's not here, though. Did he want to,
I
did you?
just got a text message, she says he needs 20 to 30 more minutes where he is.
So, do we want to?
Yeah.
I
I mean, we put it.
This is his obligation to be here.
Yes.
Well, we did.
You know.
We put it off as long as
Yeah.
we could.
So,
I guess the question is, where do we go with this from here? Do we want to take a vote on all the subsidiary changes and then have a clean copy for the next
You
meeting?
don't really need to, but if that's the way
I
you
don't
want to
think
do
we
it.
need to.
I would ask the solicitor.
You're gonna somebody's gonna motion to accept the changes as reflected in the
Red line
November
version.
18, 2013 document.
I believe the document is dated, I still want to go back, it was dated the 14th in my draft.
I have a hard copy, Mr. President, it
Oh.
says 11/18.
Okay.
I do too.
Okay, so if we just use the more recent, which would be 11/18.
Or you can say the more,
Yeah.
last
11/18.
stop, last file document.
It's the same document that we have online. Okay.
All right, so I'll make that motion, Mr. President.
Do you want to just make it more?
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion to accept the amendments that were made to the Section 17 site plan review, as outlined in the most recent document of November 18th, 2013.
Motion's been made by Mrs. Zelinski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second?
I'm sorry. Did you close the public hearing?
Nope. Motion to close public hearing, Mr. President.
Motion to close public hearing is made by Mr. Zelinski. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Alves. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's just on the
I'm
public
sorry.
hearing. Public hearing, closing the public hearing.
Sorry.
That's okay. So did you want your vote recorded? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now, your motion.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to accept the amendments that were made to Section 17 site plan review as outlined in the most recent copy dated November 18th, 2013.
Motion by Mrs. Zelinski. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Alves. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask for the roll call vote.
Ms. Alves? Yes. Mr. McGee?
No.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Flaherty?
Yes, motion carries 3-1. And now you're free to make a motion document as amended. Is that correct?
Yes.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Zelinski, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Alves. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote.
Ms. Alves?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
No.
Mr. Zelinski?
Yes.
Mr. Flaherty?
Yes. Motion carries. 3-1. And I believe that covers everything, but can the clerk just double check that we've covered everything? I think we have.
Yep.
So with that, I would ask for a motion to adjourn at 8:16. Moved by Councilor Al, is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Zelinski, all in favor say aye.
I didn't second it,
No?
but I will.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
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 Hold on.